could you be quiet a wee minute? Can I ask firstly if members could, I'll go through the list actually of members and see how many. Okay, members, can we be quiet?
I don't think they can hear us, guys.
Can anybody hear me as chair of the committee?
Clearly not. Can't hear.
Hello?
Not working, guys.
Hello, members, can you hear me? It's Paula.
No.
Okay, we'll turn this off again for a moment.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is.
Okay, and I declare the meeting open to the public. I want to advise that there are 3 members in attendance here in the Senate chamber today and 5 members via teleconferencing. In person we have myself along with Kelly Armstrong and Andy Allen, and then following members are via teleconferencing. That's Jonathan Buckley, Mark Durkin, Carol McKillen, Sinead Innes, and we're just waiting on Fra joining us as well. So can I ask members to refrain from using their mobile phones during the meeting, given the potential interference with the telecommunication facilities? It's especially important that we adhere to this today. Also, you will know that our meeting today is scheduled to last 25 minutes, although we have booked an additional hour if we need it. With that in mind, can I ask members to be short and focused in all of their questioning? So I'll move then on to the agenda, and we'll go to agenda item number 1, which is apologies. I have an apology from Robin Newton, and hopefully Fra will be joining us at some stage during the meeting. I haven't had any apologies from him. I'll move on then to item number 2, which is the draft minutes. The minutes of our last meeting held on the 6th of April are at page 5 of your meeting packs. Can I ask members, first of all, in the room, are you content with the minutes as drafted?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, members on the teleconferencing, all content?
Agreed. Yep, agreed.
Agreed.
Great, thank you. We'll move on then to agenda item 3, which is matters arising. Members, you have been provided at page 15 with a ministerial response to queries on social sector size criteria and COVID-19 related issues at the meeting on the 26th of March. Item number 2, members have been provided at page 25 with an update on the latest actions the Minister has taken in relation to COVID-19 outbreak. Then item number 3, members have been provided with a copy of the 6th report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules on page 27 of your pack. The Examiner draws attention to the Statutory Sick Pay General Coronavirus Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2020 and states that the Department has breached the 21-day rule. However, the Examiner is content with the Department's reasons for doing this, which was which was a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. Are members content? Are there any comments so far on that? Okay, thank you. Members in the room content? Yep, okay. Then item number 4 on this part is members have been provided with, at page 35, with a copy of the guidance for private rented tenants and landlords as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. Again, I'll ask members, are you content to note this?
Agreed.
Thank you. Number 5 on the list, then members have been provided at page 62 with a departmental reply to committee queries on plans to automate the current manual process of paying universal credit housing costs to landlords in the private rented sector. Are members content to note that also?
Agreed.
Thank you. Then number 6, members have been provided at page 63 with a departmental reply to committee queries on the review of the advice sector and the social supermarket pilot. Can I ask members if there are any comments, or are they content to note that also?
Could I just ask,
Kelly?
it does highlight that the social supermarkets were due to end at the end of March, and there would be reconsideration of that. We're past that date now. I'm just wondering if there's an update from the Minister if she intends to continue those.
Okay, we can ask that. Thank you, Kelly. Any other members content? Yes? Okay, thank you. Then number 7 then is members have been provided at page 65 with a copy of the survey report on the consultation of liquor licensing laws. Members, we also had a number of responses to issues the committee raised which came in late yesterday. These are in your table packs under matters arising beginning at page 3. The first 2 responses are COVID related. Can I ask members if they're content to request a departmental briefing on the report at a future meeting?
Yes, please.
Oh, that's the liquor licensing part, yeah? Everybody happy enough with that? Okay. The third response on page 15 of tabled items provides clarification on the reclassification of registered housing associations. Members will note that an extension to the derogation has been granted by Treasury up to the 31st of March 2021. In one way, this is good news, but in another, it will have an impact on accessing financial transactions capital, which is particularly important to the Northern Ireland co-ownership and housing associations. Members, any comment on that they want to bring up? Are they content to note? Okay. Okay, and just finally on matters arising, I just want to inform our members that I had a telephone call with the Minister on Monday evening, early evening, where I asked her several questions that some of the members had put forward and other questions that I had myself. I didn't ask any of the budgetary questions because I knew that we were going to be looking at the budget today. I did ask her about the discretionary support update, and she did provide me with figures on, albeit on the telephone. She said she will forward that through for all members to have sight of that. I also asked her about the ESA, JSA and universal credit uptake, and she again has figures on that which she will provide to the committee hopefully this week. I was hoping it would be through before now, but it should be here this week. Also asked her around the numbers to do with the food boxes and how that's going and how that's being rolled out in councils, because we know that various councils are doing it in various ways. So I've asked for the figures on each council, the amount of food boxes that each council has used to date and what their requests are, and also about councils in general and council meetings, because the legislation does not allow for council meetings to be held remotely, unlike ourselves where we are holding our meetings now remotely. So the Minister has said that her and the Department we're looking at that issue this week and next week to see if there's any way they can amend the legislation to allow councils to meet remotely, which I think is vitally important as well, given some of the very large decisions that are being made in councils also. I'm sure there were a few other issues that I can't recall now that we spoke about also. But as you know, the last time the Minister and I spoke, she did up a very detailed note on it. So I would expect her to send that through as well. Are members content with that?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that you joined us, Fra?
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Good to have you here.
It's a pleasure to hear you from my social lifestyle.
No, pleasure to have you, Fra. Okay, we'll then move on to agenda item number 4, which is a departmental budget briefing. Members have been provided with a paper at page 153. A research paper is also provided in your table papers at page 18. If members have any questions, can you please wait until the end, until officials have briefed us. I will do what we did the last time, and I'll go around every one of you and ask if you have any questions or comment. After that, we have with us then today, we have, let me see, okay, Gavin Patrick.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi Gavin. Cherie Arnold.
Yes, I'm here too.
And then I think Anne is with us as well. Oh, that's not for this. Sorry, I'm just being told that's not for this. Okay, so Gavin and Cherie, I'm going to hand over to you, and then we'll come in with questions whenever you're finished. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to brief you today on the Department's budget position. I'll begin by giving a brief overview of the current forecasted closing position for 1920 before providing an update on the 2021 position. Where I can, I will refer to the tables in the budget template that we have completed for you. The Department's final 1920 departmental expenditure limit, the DEL budget, totals 797 million resource and 196 million capital. Tables 1.2a highlight the additional resource funding of 8.2 million received in year. The key areas were increased employers' pension costs and Brexit. Additional capital funding of 24.2 million was also received. 20 million for the Northern Ireland co-ownership housing scheme allocation in lieu of the financial transaction capital surrendered, and 4.2 to deliver on the Department's statutory requirement in relation to the housing executive tabled adoption to the housing executive stock. Tables 1.2b highlight the reduced requirements during the 1920 year with the detailed explanations provided. The majority of these reduced requirements were ring-fence funding, with the key overarching reason being that they were demand-led services. In relation to capital, the reduced requirement of 4.2 million related to the delay in taking forward the Casement Park Sports Stadium project. We are currently working through the Department's provisional year-end outturn, which is due with the Department of Finance by 14th of May. This is clearly a more difficult task this year than others, given the situation we are in, both in terms of potential variance at year-end and the ability to collate the key information. However, as it stands at the moment, we are forecasting a small easement in resource, which will remain well within our tolerance of 1%. While the Department's year-end outturn position is still subject to change, no significant pressures or easements are expected at this stage. In regards to capital, the COVID-19 situation had a significant impact at the end of the year, with projects either pausing or not starting at all. Therefore, we do anticipate a significant underspend and have alerted the OF to this as soon as we were aware of this in March. The capital easement position, taking into account the latest housing sector forecast in respect of new build. This easement has arisen due to units being lost against the Department's target of 1,850 units in 1920 due to the COVID-19 consequences of the early closing of land registry, decision by some councils to cancel planning committees, leaving schemes without planning, advice from the Law Society for members not to complete new contracts, and developers not being prepared to sign and commence new build projects. DWF supplier informally aware of the Department's forecast year-end capital easement and continue to be regularly updated. Furthermore, DWF have been approached in relation to the potential for end-year flexibility, EYF, to manage the situation. However, given the potential for delay and slippage in planned capital projects in 2021, it is likely that any additional funding required, if it is required, will be bid for through the normal monitoring round process. Whilst the Department's capital year-end outturn position is still subject to change, it is expected that the capital outturn will breach our internal financial tolerance, specifically due to COVID-19. This underspend will feed into the Northern Ireland block position, the DOF to then manage through the budget exchange scheme with Treasury. Moving on to the Budget 2021 resource position in respect of the proposed budget. It was agreed by the Executive on the 30th of March, announced to the Assembly on the 31st of March, and is due to be debated in full by the Assembly next week, in the week commencing the 4th of May, before it is finalised. The headline resource DEL budget provided to the Department is $824 million in 2021. Due to known budget movements, the settlement is not directly comparable with the Department's 1920 budget. On this basis, indicative financial allocations for 2021 have been issued, with the clear caveat that the Department's budget is still to be approved by the Assembly and may be subject to change during 2021 in line with Minister's priorities and the changing landscape due to COVID-19. The Department recognises the financial challenges faced in both the current and future years and the need to prioritise available resources to ensure services are delivered in the most effective and efficient manner. While there has not been a budget cut in 2021, there are significant growing financial pressures arising from COVID-19, plus additional demands, including the impact of cost increases. Tables in 2.1a highlight the pressures facing the Department when the original budget process was being worked through. However, the current COVID-19 situation means that the needs of business areas and arm's length bodies against the Department's 2021 baseline resource budget are being revised daily due to changing requirements and delays in recruitment. Therefore, in order to get a clearer budgetary picture for 2021 and to inform the June monitoring round, we will be working with business areas over the coming weeks to understand both the changing resource and capital requirements in the current operating environment. This will inform a resource paper on the financial challenges faced and recommendations to the Minister in respect of 2021 finances. In relation to the 2021 capital, as part of the initial capital allocations, business areas have been allocated funding to meet inescapable and pre-commitments in 2021. Given the current COVID-19 situation, the capital needs of business areas are changing due to reducing activities, slippage from 1920 capital projects, and 2021 capital project delays. Further work will therefore be required to understand the Department's actual capital requirements for 2021 in light of the environment we are now operating in, and take into account when capital projects can commence again. The 1920 professional outturn position will provide the starting point for profiling spend in 2021 for those projects that were paused due to COVID-19. Revised 2021 capital expenditure profiles will be developed to inform the June monitoring round paper in May. Specifically in relation to COVID-19, the Department originally bid for $139.6 million of COVID-19 funding. After confirming that a $30 million bid for discretionary support economic shock would not progress within the Q1 timeframe, as legislative changes were required, the Department received a Q1 allocation of $20.3 million against the four of the 17 remaining bids, leaving a shortfall of $40.3 million in Q1. The successful bids were for $3.3 million for the Housing Executive for a surge in homelessness costs, $5 million for discretionary support schemes to introduce a new short-term living expenses grant for people in extreme, exceptional or crisis situations, $2 million for a new community support fund distributed by the Community Support Programme in partnership with the councils, which is providing support in terms of finance, food and connectivity, and £10 million for helping those who cannot leave their homes and have no other means of accessing food. At this early point in Q1, it is anticipated that the full $20 million allocation will be spent in full. In addition, further bids are planned for benefit delivery, operational resilience, housing executive supporting people, and further funding for the community support scheme. And the local government funding and existing bid is being revised. Given the shortfall in COVID-19 allocation against the Department's bid, the Department will face pressures which will have to be managed internally in existing baseline funding unless further COVID-19 specific funding is forthcoming. It's a high-level position both for 1920 and 2021, and I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll ask a few questions, then I'll come to members in the room, and then I'll go in alphabetical order. Just I'll begin with the members on the telephone. Some of it, I just want a wee bit more clarification on that you mentioned. The part about the homelessness, which it's 4.1 million pressure on temporary accommodation, and you'd said that yes, 1 million will be met by the department. Can you just clarify then what the expectation is again for meeting the remaining money there that will be required for that pressure?
So that was the original bid
for
2021. Well, since that point, we have received further funding, further 3.3 funding from COVID-19, which is helping with the immediate issues. And then as we work through over the next few weeks on the overall financial position for 2021, we will reassess the need for further funding on homelessness.
You'd also mentioned there about, let me see, was it discretionary support? And I know that originally the discretionary support, we looked at 26 million that the Minister had spoken about, had been identified. You've identified 30 million. Is that in addition to the 26 million that the Minister had spoke about, or is that inclusive of that for the discretionary support initiatives?
Specifically in relation to COVID-19?
Yeah.
It would be the same.
Okay.
It was for economic shock. So the 5 million that we have received is for immediate need, and then 30 million was looking forward to the economic, more of, I suppose, medium term than the immediate issue we're facing at the moment.
Okay. Can I just ask you then also about the money that the Community Secretary had mentioned on the 18th of April for additional funding for local councils of 1.6 billion. Now, I know Northern Ireland, our councils work slightly differently and have different powers to councils over in GB. And we know that you've identified 16.5 million for our councils here. Do you expect to see any of that money from the Westminster government being allocated to here, or has there been any conversations about that?
As part of our initial COVID-19 bid, we had included a bid for 33 million. At this point, we haven't received any funding for that.
Okay.
The Barnet Council councils, as members will be aware, are unhypothecated, so it will be up to the executive to decide how it's distributed, but we are making the case, and we are reviewing that original £33 million bid to make sure it's as robust as possible, and where there is likeness between our councils and the other councils, those will be highlighted as well.
Just another thing to do with unspent money, because there will be various projects, capital projects or otherwise, that have had to come to a standstill because of the COVID-19. What's happening to do with that unspent money? Is that going back into the pot, or is that going to be extended? Has there been any talk on that?
So that's why I mentioned about the end-year flexibility, and that was had been requested from the Department of Finance. And that wouldn't be the normal way to have end-year flexibility. I think the issue for us this year is the fact that we aren't able to take forward our capital projects yet.
Yeah.
So there will be delays in those in this year. So we've already got an allocation for 2021, and it may be that allocation is enough to pick up all the slippages from 1920. Or if that isn't the case, then it's likely that we would need to bid in year in the monitoring rounds. Again, that work's going to be taken forward over the next few weeks to try and assess that position with the information that we have at the moment.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to members. I have some more questions. If they're not asked, I'll come back to them. Kelly, do you want to go first?
Thank you very much. Can I just clarify something first of all? This departmental template, is that a template that's used across all committees or all departments, or is this just particularly for communities?
it was issued by the Assembly to all departments.
Okay, because I have a concern, and I think, to be honest, this is probably to do with someone forgetting to proofread this document. But if you'll notice on your own page 4, or for committee members, it's page 155 of our pack, and this term is repeated 3 times throughout the document, where it says, "No conclusory statements, please, as such responses inevitably will yield clarification questions from the committee." I have to say I'm somewhat disappointed to read that. It looks like an instruction that has been left on a template, and I would like to know where that has come from, because it leads me to question this whole document, to say that, you know, and it's repeated again on page 160 of our pack and 170 of our pack, where basically information is being said not to be included because questions will come from the committee. I have to say that this is out with RHI recommendations, where we have been told that civil servants should be expecting to receive information to allow us to scrutinise. And while we want to be able to scrutinise this document, that type of qualification in a template doesn't help.
That information was on the template and it was received by the department. We did not add that to the template.
Okay, so there's been nothing withheld for clarification from the committee?
No, we've been open in what we provided.
Okay. Seems a bit strange.
Kevin is just, if you want to just mention
Yeah,
there.
just to be clear, the template that was issued to all departments was a template that was produced by Raise for all committees and was issued as received. We can go back to Raise and ask him
I would like
maybe
that.
why that question or that statement was included.
I think in particular in this day and age after RHI, you know, it does say, for instance, I looked at the recommendations coming out, and it's something that we all have to be cognizant of, that like for instance it says about civil service should have the self-awareness to seek and use external challenge. It says that, you know, we should a tougher level of external scrutiny, such as from non-executives on the boards of departments and from strengthened assembly committees, would help to increase in scrutiny. At this stage, we are looking at a budget document that I appreciate is being handled in an extremely difficult time. The pressures that were put on for the end of the financial year and that we're seeing in Q1 are unprecedented. There are huge concerns. Is communities getting enough money to be able to deal with all of the COVID-19 responses that it needs to make? And so far, so good. It seems to be going really well. The rest of the year has me somewhat concerned, because the figures that we're seeing, for instance, looking at supporting people, the amount for the rest of the year is exactly the same amount as it is for the first quarter of this current financial year. Is that enough money to actually deliver an appropriate supporting people programme? That, of course, wouldn't be for finance staff to answer, but there are certain things there. And I noticed at the very end that the Minister, it seems to indicate that the Minister hasn't decided her priorities for this year as yet, and therefore that may also change how the budget will be spent. When will we see those priorities? When will they be defined? We are due to go to debate in the Chamber on the 5th. And today, if we're looking at this budget, it's very difficult for me to support the Minister if I don't know exactly what her priorities are. As far as the financial package is concerned, you have my greatest sympathies. This is an extremely difficult budget to look at, and what we're facing for the rest of this year is very, very difficult. But I'm just concerned that, is this the whole picture, just given those comments that have been contained within that template?
I think, well, to answer that, we have provided all the information we can on that template at this stage. As you've highlighted, it's a very difficult time to try and capture a finance position, and it will change on a daily basis. Regarding the Minister's priorities, obviously a priority at the moment is around COVID-19, and we need to, and the responses around it, and we will need to start looking forward to the rest of the year again, and we'll be doing that over the next number of weeks, and looking to capture any changes that we need to do within June monitoring.
But can I just ask, this is a paper that's been provided to the committee today that outlines the figures for the rest of the quarters of this year. We're also, as I said, we're due to go to the Assembly Chamber on the 5th to debate this. If this is going to so substantially change after today and after the 5th of May, then how is the committee supposed to scrutinise?
So the quarters that you mentioned there, the COVID-19 bid, as they stand. So the likes of supporting people, all the business areas opening budget for 2021 was based on the opening 1920. So those quarter figures are the additional bids that we're looking for COVID-19. Regarding to how the committee can scrutinise the budget position, there will be further scrutiny when we get to the June monitoring stage, and we'll return at that point and be highlighting any further changes that there are in our budget or any changes to priorities for the committee to discuss at that point.
So we just retain then the figures that we have from the 30th and the 31st of March, and we'll get an update on that whenever. I'm just not convinced that there may be a monitoring round, that there's any extra money to slush about, because we're spending everything at the moment as part of the crisis. But thank you for that. I look forward to those figures. But
just on that, my understanding is there is to be a June monitoring round, and may not be a case of allocating money, but it will allow departments to move money to where they need it to move, and again that would be through and after scrutiny of the committees.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Andy, have you anything at this stage?
Nothing at this stage, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the phone, so I'll start then in alphabetical order. So I'll go to you, Johnny, first. Have you any comment you want to make?
Thank you, Chair. No, it's just probably in brief on Kelly's point. Again, I would want to see very clearly outlined the Minister's priorities in relation to the current crisis that we're in before this goes. I think that needs to be very clearly stated about how reprioritisation and facing the circumstances that we know we face now, but not only now, but into the future. That's the only point of comment that I'd have to make at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I had difficulty hearing a wee bit of that, but was it correct in picking up that it was said there that there's a shortfall of some 40-something million unless there's more COVID-19 funding forthcoming? And if that is the case, has all of the money that came across to the executive, the COVID-19 money, been allocated? And if not, how much is unallocated to date? I'd also have a question just in terms of the support for charities. I know a couple of members, Johnny certainly raised it yesterday in the Chamber. Has there been any indication of money coming into the Department to provide that support? And then certainly I'd echo Kelly's sentiment around the inclusion of the italics here, that basically no conclusory statements, please, if such responses initially will yield clarification questions from the committee. I mean, perish the thought that we'd seek clarification on anything. I'm not blaming the departmental officials for that, right enough, but I think it's fair also to echo Kelly's observation that problems here will go way beyond the lockdown period, and while the support coming during the lockdown has been great in terms of grants, in terms of furlough schemes, but as we emerge from that, times are going to become even tougher actually, because when support for job retention ends, so sadly will the retention of many of those jobs, and their reliance on social security and more reliance on the areas within DFC's remit. There'll be a bigger pressure on them, and you would be a wee bit fearful looking at the budget figures there that the cupboard might be bare when that time comes.
Okay, just to pick up on the first point, yes, there is a funding gap then, because we've only received £20 million of COVID-specific funding. And we are continuing our bids. Our bids are still on the table with the OF that we originally sent, the ones that haven't been successful yet, and we're continuing to push to close that gap. There is a certain amount still remaining at the executive level for redistribution, but not a lot. It would include the 50 million announced on Saturday for local governments, which we will, as I've already mentioned, try to do our best to make linkages to, albeit it's unhypothecated, so that there's no certainty around that. Regarding charities, there's 22 million aren't consequential for charities. I think that's to be finalised, but it's around that figure. That hasn't been allocated out yet, but I know officials between different departments, including BSC and the Department of Finance, are looking at how that can be worked through going forward and the most effective way that can be dealt with. Regarding the future, that is a key risk, and is what we're looking at over the next few weeks. While the original budget was set based on our pressures pre-COVID-19, and we have issued out those initial allocations to give some certainty to business areas based on the 1920 budget. Obviously, those business areas aren't able to take forward the work that they had planned at this moment in time, and that may happen the rest of the year. So that's why we're working over the next few weeks on a paper to try and get as an accurate position as possible with the information we have at this moment in time to try and plan the way forward for the rest of 2021.
Okay, no, thank you, and I do appreciate the difficulty of the task that the department officials have in this, and that's across every department as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Sinead?
Yeah, no questions really, more just a general observation, and I think what's quite apparent is this Minister's commitment to getting money out the door and not hoarding it and not keeping it for a rainy day, and making sure that whatever money is available is going to ease the pressure, and it's going to help vulnerable people who need it. The only thing, like when you look at the fact that it's on page 158 of our pack there, just in relation to the Caseman Park project, it is regrettable that ring fence money had to be surrendered in June, and then a further 0.2 million surrendered in January. And I'm just wondering, post this, while COVID-19 and even the pressures, that are affecting people during this time, obviously has to be our priority. We do have to keep an eye to life post-COVID. And I'm just wondering, I know we probably, won't be able to get an answer to this maybe today, or maybe people just won't know, but that money was surrendered. Obviously, it went back into the pot to be redistributed. And I'm wondering, there's clubs crying out for some kind of funding stream in terms of improving their own facilities, and if we even look at the sub-regional what do you call it? The
Stadia programme.
Regional Stadia programme.
So we know the pressures are facing clubs, facing soccer clubs as well. So I would just like to see a sort of a plan post this, a stimulus package for our grassroots clubs and our regional clubs as well, because they've given up quite a lot over the past while. They've been the ones at the coalface here in terms of the community response to the COVID crisis. So it's just going forward. I know there's going to be pressures and there's going to be asks from every sector of society, but I would like to see something put in place for them in terms of a stimulus package and some sort of funding stream to help clubs get back on their feet and to get facilities up and running and to get them up to a good standard again.
The immediate issue with sports clubs and so on, the Minister had announced the COVID Sports Hardship Fund, £750,000 for it last week. So looking at the immediate issues, your point I think is more about how if capital can't be used in different ways for smaller clubs, and I'll take that back to colleagues in the department, and that can be considered when we're looking at the overall capital position for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just add on to that, Sinead, if you don't mind? Yeah? Okay. Okay, it's just, you talked about the Minister, the 750,000 that she has put aside to help those clubs, which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But we know, hearing back from clubs now that are coming back to say that they have to wait now on a second tranche. Is that a separate amount of money, additional above this? Because we do know that clubs from all sectors and all sections that rely heavily on footfall to keep their clubs going are having real severe difficulties, as Sinead said. So that 750,000, is there additional, or is it just that it's being done in tranches? Can you tell us?
That was the initial amount, and we didn't get any COVID-19 funding, specific funding for that, so we're using our own baseline for that. I would need to check with colleagues as to what their plans are, if they're planning to extend that further or not. For larger clubs, they can, if you have the DFE, the Department for Economy, 25,000 small business grant scheme, or should be able to. But we can come back to you on that.
No, I
think it was oversubscribed from my understanding, the first amount, which is understandable in the circumstances. But I can come back to you.
I know, and I know there were so many of those clubs were unable to apply for either the small business or the larger grant, and I mean it was greatly welcomed that the Minister had put this money, found this money to do this. Sorry, Sinead, for cutting in there. Anything else you want to add on to that, Sinead?
No, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I move then to Fra?
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'd like to thank the officials for their presentation. I was just to pick up on a couple of things, because I think most of the questions have already been asked. But I know that we find ourselves, and ministers find themselves in a very difficult and unique set of circumstances in trying to cope with the onslaught of this terrible virus. And but obviously we all need to be planning for the future when we come out of it. I was a wee bit concerned that in terms of handing back money, and I think you had posed the question earlier on, is that has there been no recognition that it's better to try to maintain that funding, so that when we do approach or come to a stage when we're coming out of it, that you're able to deal with all the stuff that Mark has been talking about, and that has hit the ground running. Because there are a number of charities there who that are on the front line dealing with many of the communities who are feeling hardship, that are also feeling the pinch.
So the money that was given back was in the 1920 year, and if there's any easement, it's part of the 1920 position, and that will all be captured in provisional outturn for us and for other departments.
Yeah. So
at that point, then the Department of Finance, while individual departments don't have any set end-year flexibility, there is a scheme in place between the Department of Finance and Treasury for the budget exchange scheme to carry money over, any unspent money, from one year into the next. Now, there are limits on that, but they're able to do that. Now, if there have been an assumption made when the 2021 budget was set of how much we would carry over. If it turns out that arrangements are higher than that and we carry over more, then there may be an opportunity then for more funding to be allocated out within 2021. Hopefully that wasn't too technical.
No, I appreciate that, and I do understand that there are big hitting the departments are like the health, the economy, finance, and that probably have first call. But equally, the sort of issues that this committee and our department deals with are also life-saving, life-threatening, and provide for the most vulnerable in society, and need to be taken into consideration also when we're looking at, because it's across all the different departments where we have to have an eye on the outcomes that's taking place within our communities.
Yep, definitely, and we will bid, and we have bid for the COVID-19, and we'll continue to press on those. And when we get to June monitoring, if there is money available, we will make bids as appropriate at that time.
Sir, can I just ask one other question? And I've noticed I'll leave it till later.
No, go ahead, Fra. That's fine. Go ahead.
It's just that in terms, I noticed the £20 million block grant for co-ownership housing, and say that being allocated at this time when you see under pressures. There's never any real feedback on what the 20 million is for and what the results of that is.
Which 20 million was that, sorry?
I think it was co-ownership. Housing. Maybe I picked it up wrong. But I noticed there was a 20 million allocation.
Is that not quite sure?
Maybe
to do with the financial transaction capital.
That was a 20 million allocation during 1920 that we received. It was actually because of the need to use normal capital DEL to fund the co-ownership housing scheme, given the reclassification of it and the need for the derogation. For co-ownership in 2021, we actually have bid to Department of Finance for both 55 million of FTC, which we won't be able to use if we can't get the classification reversed, and 55 million too of normal capital to keep the scheme running. However, that yet hasn't been allocated because the scheme is at the minute paused in light of COVID.
Yeah. Okay. Could it just a wee follow up that? Does it go to the co-ownership housing association, or is it spread across the housing association movement that all run co-ownership schemes?
The majority of it goes to the co-ownership housing association.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just follow up on something that Fra said on Mark and others? I mean, this is a 2021 budget. What I think is very concerning is the I suppose maybe a little bit of lack of vision that we're going to come out of this the other side. We're going to see increased unemployment. We're going to see increases on need of people coming out of this, maybe more so than even in the middle of it. So I think that's maybe just what some of us are just a little bit worried about, that that there doesn't seem to be that provision there, especially for our voluntary and community sector that do a massive amount of work in assisting those people and navigating their way through any of the systems. So I don't know, Fra, is that the kind of thing that you're thinking about as well there, that is a worry going forward? I don't know if you can hear me. Maybe not. That's just a point to put across. I'll move on anyway then. I'll go to Carol.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions here. And if you don't mind, I would just rather rattle through my questions rather than the official engagement. Okay?
Yep.
So the point that Kelly made at the start about the language it's used, I suspected that came pre the Assembly being up and running, and it was probably something that was initiated by the head of civil service through the OS rather than raised. So I just need clarification on that. The other aspect of it is that concerns me about all this is, for example, the Support and People Fund. I know for a fact that in North Belfast, some of the housing associations take responsibility for folds, for blocks, for vulnerable people, are having difficulty and are challenged in servicing those vulnerable people as much as they did previously. So I would like a breakdown from the housing executive as to, and the NIFA, the Federation of Social Housing, what alternatives they're taking, because this fund every year has remained static, even though in real terms it seems like a cut, and that's what they're saying. But I'd like to know what the funds are being used for, particularly through Housing Association and the Housing Executive. The other aspect of it is that in relation to the Minister's priorities, I could say the same about every department. I've read through a lot of the stuff that's coming up on the website, and a lot of it has been certainly superseded by COVID. But certainly there's something we need to come back to, and I'm going to look forward to the due monitoring round to see what's allocated from other departments, you know. So the issues that I would have is, for example, on page 74, I think it is the VAR pack, in relation to the housing executive. So it talked about the housing executive. I want more information on the way this is presented, because it looks at, if you look at A, in terms of the challenges for the housing association and the housing executive in terms of rent increases, and certainly the maintenance of stock, and then it goes to B, like the housing executive moving into the private sector, leading to, I want more information on that because I don't know what that means. And I could suspect, but I'm not getting into speculation at that stage. The other kind of concerns I would have is, and it's probably more for the Minister for Infrastructure, I appreciate that in relation to Caseman Park, and I want to declare an interest here as a previous Minister for decal, but certainly Caseman Park, co-ownership, and even the housing executive and housing association, big kind of infrastructure programs that are waiting on planning permission. I'd certainly like to see what processes, and this is something that should be taken back to the executive, what processes are going to be made, because plan permissions could be awarded, and then people could have the flexibility to start occurring even in this COVID stage, because there will be a big backlog, and that's going to have an impact on the money that will be available or not available in years ahead. And we'll finish on this. The Department for Communities budget isn't enough, given the amount of work that they're doing. I appreciate that some other departments have used communities, like for example education, to get free school meals, and that money's been sent across. But certainly the amount of shielding and the amount of if you look at even discretionary funds and the contingency funds, particularly around the increase for universal credit, some of those other initiatives, particularly within the community and boundary sector, are actually life-saving for people, and we need to make sure that they're as best supported as possible. And I think we prefer the committee, they've been very supportive of that. But I'd like to see additional money hopefully been allocated to the Department for Communities in the June monitoring round, that maybe they could be moved around. That's me, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Well, just to come back on the supporting people query, I'll go back to my colleagues and we can get more information just on the breakdown you'd asked for.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry for interrupting. The last thing is, in the Human Rights Commission, in their correspondence, they raised concern regarding groups not being able to access finance. I'm assuming that refugees and asylum seekers who mightn't have bank accounts. Could we get some more information on that from the department, if possible, please?
Yeah, that's to do with the free school meal stuff as well, yeah.
Okay. We can come back on that and supporting people regarding the need to seek more money in June monitoring. We are already doing that, like I say, in the COVID-19 specific funding, and we'll continue to do that as much as we can. And I suppose the question is what pot is there to be able to allocate out, but we will fight our corner.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to come back there? Up any of Carol's questions, Gavin, or is that you?
I think the other element, when Carol was mentioning about the stadium and process and so on, I think that would be for DFI. Okay. On the planning side of things.
Carol, do you want to come back at all on that?
Yeah, I would ask that the committee would support a letter going even to the First and Deputy First Minister, because in communities we have stadia, sub-regional. We've also got the housing build programme. We've got the co-ownership through the financial transactions capital, and all will be reliant on planning permissions. And I'm not convinced that planning permission could be sought. Like, for example, and we're all very mindful of the scrutiny and the abnormality of the crisis that we're in. But certainly, Derby has went through accelerated passage in order to make sure people's lives are shaded and supported as best possible. Hopefully when we get to the other end of this, and we will, we need to make sure that the programmes that have been in previous mandates and mandates before that are fit to hit the ground running. And I do think getting the planning permission sorted will be a huge obstacle, and I don't know what the impediments are even in this COVID series, and I think the executive needs to support the Minister for Infrastructure in this. So I would ask that we write to the First and Deputy First Ministers to get this clarified, please.
Okay, I know at the end of this we'll be putting up some questions and some comments and some views that will be going forward for us to approve next week to go to the Department of Finance, but then we can also, following on from this, as you say, if the committee is minded to, then we can draft something to send forward, of course, to the First and Deputy First Minister on this issue. Absolutely.
Johnny,
Go ahead, Johnny.
For us to see a copy of that correspondence, because I'm not sure whether I would agree with that point in particular, given the priorities that are pressing at the moment. In relation to one of Carol's earlier point, I would 100% agree, because it was probably in reference to my comment about the Minister's priorities. I totally agree. Priorities are going to have to be changed for all ministers going forward. In my opinion, yes, while we all look forward to the day in which post-COVID-19, the aftermath and the impact is going to linger on for quite some time, perhaps even for the rest of this mandate. So I think priorities must reflect the COVID situation that we're in, and also the recovery and aftermath post-COVID. So it's just about that on record.
No, and I get that. I think that was one of the comments I'd made earlier about going forward on the general principles of going forward, is that we're going to find ourselves in very different times. We're going to have councils because of the lack of rates, and as well, that they're going to be stretched to capacity, or are going to have to make some really, really tough decisions for their ratepayers, and we know we're going to have to make some extremely tough decisions here in the Assembly as well, and it's not for the next year or the next 2 years, it could be much longer than that. Do we pull back from this? I think that is something that is up for discussion post-COVID, certainly, as to how we see the committee going forward. Kelly, did you want to come in that point?
I just wanted to just seek clarification. I appreciate where Carol's coming from. The fact that we're not able to spend capital monies because of planning permissions not being given. Should we not give the Minister in the Department of Infrastructure the opportunity first to perhaps explain to the committee what the hold-up is, and then if there is something more significant, then go to the First Minister, Deputy First Minister and the wider executive? I think I would just prefer to get clarification from DFI first, and to understand exactly what the hold-up is. Is it staffing? Is it legal? What is it that's causing this issue? Because it's not just those larger national stadia. There are other things that are being held up in planning permission to do with local councils and their ability to meet and keep progressing on. And there's also delays because some of the construction workers were not able to work for a while. I see quite a lot of them are going back now, but I would like to get clarification from DFI first before going to maybe First Minister, Deputy First Minister, just to get a rationale, and if we need to, then certainly follow that up.
Are you happy with that we write then, first of all, to the Infrastructure Minister to ask what exactly, if she could detail what the hold-ups are in this?
I'm happy to do that, but I'd like the correspondence copied into the executive as well.
Okay.
Because they need to support the Minister for Infrastructure. The whole executive needs to support the Minister for Infrastructure and bring in proposals forward.
Okay, that's okay. So we'll then do a letter then through to, Kevin's just saying here he'll bring it back to committee then next week for approval, and then we'll get that done.
That will come to the committee again.
Yes, it will.
Because it's just, I'm not sure whether I would be on the same page as that, given the priorities that I see that should be rightly prioritised at the moment.
Well, no, it will come back before the committee, Johnny, for the committee to look at, and at this stage we will be asking the infrastructure minister what the hold-ups are. That's the first thing that we need to ask. Okay, members, I'm going to move on and ask if members have any further questions they want to ask to do with the budget briefing. First go to the phones, and I'll go through the list again. Johnny, have you any further questions to do with the budget?
No, I'm fine. Thanks for the officials for coming along.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
No, that's fine, Chair, thank you.
Sinead?
No, I'm content, thank you, Chair.
Fra?
No, thank you, Chair.
And Carol?
No, I'm grand, thank you.
Okay, in the room, any further questions? No?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Kelly. One more.
I would appreciate just as a committee, if there's obviously consideration at this stage about future bids going forward for, any monies that's left over that may be able to be allocated through finance and treasury. It would be useful to know the priorities on that and what we're going for, just so that we can think ahead then for the future budget, what's been successful in those bids and what's not.
Okay. All right. Then thank you then to Gavin and Sheree. Thank you for taking our questions today and for briefing us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And obviously we'll come back again towards June monitoring time and provide more briefing for you then.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, members.
Thank you.
Members, what we want to ask you to do is that after considering the budget paper today and the questioning and the responses, if members have any further comments they want to make or anything they want highlighted, can they let the committee clerk know by this Friday, and then the clerk will produce a paper on the committee's views, and for the committee to consider that at next week's meeting, and then that will then be forwarded on to the Committee for Finance as they're collating all of the committee's responses. Are members happy with that?
Yes, happy.
Okay, everybody agreed. So that's for anything that they want included. It needs to be in with the clerks by this Friday. Okay, members, we're going to move on then to agenda item number 5, which is the Westminster Pensions Bill Legislative Consent Motion. You'll find the paperwork for that at page 178 of your pack. Members will remember that we took a briefing from officials on this LCM a number of weeks ago. Also note that the LCM is now formally referred to this committee. The committee may now consider those issues in the bill which are devolved and report them to the Assembly. If members have any queries on the LCM, we have with us today Jerry McCann and Doreen Roy, and also Anne McCleary, I think, is with us also.
Yes, I've joined you finally here.
Oh, good. You're all very welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So it's just really just to remind members just of what this is about and any issues that were brought up earlier. So if I can hand over to you, and then I'll go to our dial-in people for any questioning first and foremost after that. So if you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. We briefed the committee, as you say, in some detail on the 12th of March, and that supplemented the comprehensive written briefing we'd also provided to the committee on the 26th of February in relation to the proposed LCM. As we said previously, the bill has consumer protection really at the heart of it. It aims to help people plan for the future and to protect people's pensions. It has enjoyed broad cross-party support in Parliament, and there's been wide support for what the bill seeks to achieve. Now, if it will assist the committee, we're happy to briefly outline the main provisions of the bill. In summary, firstly, the bill makes provision for collective money purchase schemes, usually referred to as CDC schemes, where contributions into a scheme are pooled and invested to deliver an aspired benefit level. This builds upon and facilitates the initiative by Royal Mail and the Communication Workers Union, which have concluded that this kind of CDC scheme would offer better outcomes for the workforce than a traditional money purchase scheme. Secondly, it strengthens protection for scheme members by giving the pensions regulator stronger powers, so that savers can be confident that their pensions are protected and that the regulator is better able to take action if pensions are put at risk. Members will be aware of several recent high-profile insolvency cases where employers have failed to give proper weight to their responsibilities to their defined benefit pension schemes. This bill seeks to address this in a range of ways. For example, a requirement on how those responsible for corporate transactions to set out how they will mitigate any adverse impact on the pension scheme, and by enhancing the regulator's information gathering powers and its powers to ensure that those responsible for schemes comply with pensions legislation. There will also be new sanctions on those who willfully or recklessly harm their pension scheme, including a maximum 7-year prison sentence and a civil penalty of up to £1 million. Thirdly, the bill increases transparency about individuals' pension savings by producing a framework for pensions dashboards to improve information for savers so they can prepare for retirement. Fourthly, it delivers clearer scheme funding standards in defined benefit schemes and strengthens the regulator's enforcement of the improved system. This is particularly important in a changing defined benefit landscape, with many schemes closed to new members or future accruals. The aim is to help trustees improve their scheme funding and investment decisions and to manage potential risk. Fifthly, the bill introduces new powers to protect pension savings to help scheme trustees ensure transfers of pension savings are made to safe and not fraudulent schemes. Sixthly, it ensures the Pension Protection Fund can continue to administer compensation appropriately. And finally, it amends the definition of administration charges to make clear which costs are covered by the definition. Now, although pensions is a devolved matter, in general, pensions policy and legislation here operate in line, as many of you members will be aware, with corresponding pension provision in England, Scotland and Wales. In addition, the Pensions Regulator, the Pensions Ombudsman and the Pension Protection Fund all operate on a UK-wide basis. The NI provisions were included in the bill in the absence of the Executive and the Functioning Assembly, and that was in order to ensure that what is in effect a single system of pensions can continue to function. As many schemes here are UK-wide schemes, it is highly desirable that the same regulatory framework is in place here within the same time frame as in Britain to facilitate compliance, planning and enforcement. The Secretary of State for Work and Pensions asked Minister to agree that the NI provisions remain in the bill and to agree to bring forward the necessary legislative consent motion. The Northern Ireland provisions mirror those made for Britain elsewhere in the bill. Importantly, under the bill, the power to make subordinate legislation and to commence provisions relating to devolved matters will vest in the Department for Communities. So that's an important thing to remember. This isn't exclusively being done by Westminster. Likewise, apologies for that. Likewise, the powers of control over the subordinate legislation will vest in the Assembly. The bill ensures that the pension system is fit for the future by strengthening the system and introducing important safeguards and deterrents against those who might seek to avoid their responsibilities. Now, if the Northern Ireland provisions are omitted from the Westminster Bill, it would be necessary to bring forward a further Assembly Bill to ensure that the pension system continues to function and that scheme members here are not put at a disadvantage compared to people in Britain. Whilst it's difficult to be definitive given the size and complexity, it's unlikely that the Westminster Bill will complete its passage much before the summer recess. The Westminster Bill will be subject to amendment as it makes its way through Parliament. We would not normally seek to introduce a bill in this area until the Westminster Bill is in its final form, and that means that it's unlikely that a further Assembly Bill could be introduced before September 2020 at the earliest. At best, such an Assembly Bill would be unlikely to complete its passage before spring 2021, assuming a slot could be obtained in the legislative programme. Now, based on our experience of previous bills in this area, our working assumption is that such a bill would fully mirror the provisions of the current Westminster Bill. Including NI provisions in the Westminster Bill allows these important provisions to be enacted in Britain and here at the same time. This gives legal certainty for schemes and employers to allow preparatory work, for example, the introduction of collective money purchase benefits and pensions dashboards, to proceed in tandem in Britain and not NI. The legislative consent process has been used in this area on a number of previous occasions, most recently for provisions of the Pension Schemes Act 2015. The intention is that a further legislative consent motion may be sought in relation to further amendments to the bill, and we will brief the committee on any such amendments. That's really as much as we want to say at this stage, but we're happy to answer any questions or clarify any issues around this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for that again. And just to refresh us, I've no questions at this stage, but I'm going to go to the phones first, and I'll start in reverse order. So I'm going to go to Carol first. Carol, have you any questions or comments on this?
None at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Fra, have you any questions or comments?
No, Chair.
Grant, thank you. Sinead?
No, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Anne.
Okay. Mark, what about you?
Thank you, Paula, and thanks to the officials for that briefing and some clarification they gave. Obviously, we want citizens here to enjoy the benefits and protections that they do elsewhere. That's right. I had been, I suppose, hesitant, and I know others had too, about going down the LCM route, and particularly when there are issues here in that are devolved. But like I say, I don't think we can afford to delay these protections for people, and we don't want people here to miss out on their entitlement. Obviously, we have had negative experience of LCM in the past, though, and it was just to get the assurance that this is, that here what we sign up to or agree into, that the goalposts aren't going to be changed again and again. But I take on board what Anne has said there, that anything or amendments or that will come back to us.
We will come back to you, yes.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Thank you, Mark. Jonathan, Johnny, any comments or questions?
No comment. Just thank you very much, Anne. Thank you.
Okay, many members in the room want to make any comment or question on that? No, fine.
I was just going to say, like Mark, given the fact that we will see this if there's any future changes, I'm just very aware that the world that we are in now may significantly change after Brexit and whatever's going to come down the road, and I would be a bit reluctant for Westminster to be able to do something without obviously the Assembly having a say. So that satisfies me that there is a protection there.
Okay, thank you. And Jerry Doran, thank you very much for your briefing. As always, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, members will know that the committee may report to the Assembly on the provision on the bill relating to Northern Ireland within 15 days of the LCM being laid. That brings us to next Wednesday. Are members content that the Clerk brings back a final paper then for the committee to agree at next week's meeting? Are members content with that? Yes. Agreed, everybody? Thank you. Okay. All right, then we'll move on then to agenda item number 6, which is SR 2020-62, the Social Fund Funeral Expenses Payment Coronavirus Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2020. Members will note that the effect of these regulations is to increase the amount that can be paid for discretionary costs of funerals such as flowers, car hire, etc., from £700 to £1,000. Can I first of all ask members that have dialed in, have they any objections to the rule?
No. Sir, can I just ask for a wee point of clarity?
Yep, absolutely.
In relation to the explanatory note on page 201, consultation, and I know I welcome this because I did push on it in relation to the funeral poverty that exists, but in light of there being no consultation because of the time pressures that are involved, how does the department intend to communicate this with not only funeral directors but also the wider public that this is available?
Okay, well then that's something, we don't have anybody here that can answer that, but I would imagine that funeral directors will be made aware of this. That is something that we can ask, we can forward on to the department.
Just if possible, just a wee explanatory note
that will
to the
do.
department as to how they may do so, but I've nothing in terms of no problem with the overall statutory regulation.
Grand, thank you, Johnny. And members in the room content? No objections? Okay.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll read into the.
Chair, just wee thing on that, and it's not welcome, obviously, the increase in the limit. But it was just, I don't know if the officials present there would be in a position to let us know.
We have no officials present, Mark, I'm afraid.
Oh,
they're all away.
Has there been an increase, I suppose, in applications for or uptake of this support, or payment?
Okay, that is something again then that we can ask in one of our questions through to the department, just for any of the figures around that, about the amount of people that are applying for that. I mean, I know there is strict criteria around applying for the grants anyway, so it won't apply to everybody. But we certainly can ask that question if you're content with that.
Yeah.
Okay, right, well then, members, if you'll let me then read it into the record, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2020-62, the Social Fund Funeral Expenses Payment Coronavirus Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2020, and subject to the Examiner's Statutory Rules report, has no objection to the rule. Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item 7. And that is SR 2020-66, the Statutory Sick Pay General Coronavirus Amendment Number 3 Regs, Northern Ireland 2020. Members will note that these regulations will extend statutory sick pay to those people who are shielding themselves in accordance with the public health guidance and who must remain at home for at least 12 weeks. Currently, if they are unable to work at home during this period, they would not receive statutory sick pay. So this is another positive that has come through. So first of all, can I ask members who have dialed in, have they any objections to this rule?
No.
Great, thank you. Members in the room, no objections? No. That's good. Okay, I'll read into the record that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2020-66, the Statutory Sick Pay General Coronavirus Amendment Number 3 Regs, Northern Ireland 2020, and subject to the Examiner's Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Okay, members, we'll move on to item...
Just on that one, I have no issue with the actual statutory sick pay, the SR there. I would like communities to convey this to economy, because the Northern Ireland Business Info website is brilliant, and it provides a lot of information, and there's a lot of information in that about for employees and employers, and I think that this clarifies an issue that many of us have dealt with during the coronavirus, that people who are shielding and not able to work, at least they know that that's a support that's available for them as well.
Okay, then we'll do that as well. We'll write and ask that is done. Okay, members, we're going to move on to agenda item number 8. Members' correspondence memo is at page 216 of your meeting pack. Can I ask members, first of all in the room, is there anything on that they want to bring to the attention of the committee? No.
Yep. 8.4. Carol mentioned it earlier about the people who have no recourse to public funds. It would be good to find out more clarity from the Minister, just what's the thinking on that and what they're going to be doing.
Okay, and Carol, that's something you had brought up as well?
Yeah, sure. And in relation even to the human rights briefing, it would be helpful. I know some of the issues raised aren't within communities, but it would be helpful that I'm assuming that's been sent on to each county, but it would be helpful some of the issues raised in this, if we can get responses if possible.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, any other members then on the phones? Anything else that they want to bring up on the correspondence list?
No, thank you.
No, all good?
All good.
Okay, so members content to note then?
Great.
Okay, thank you. The agenda on item number 9 is any other business, and it's just to remind members that as per the Chair's Liaisons Group, committees are advised to meet only to consider COVID-19 matters at this stage, but it's just to bear that in mind. But I know, Andy, you had wanted to bring something up under any other business first?
Yes, Chair. It's just in relation to the second independent review of personal independence payment, and I've been contacted, I don't know if other members similarly, by a number of members from the community groups who feel that given the current situation they may not have appropriate time to consult and add in to the review, and they're just asking if the department will give consideration to an extension.
Okay, I think that's a very good point, and I think that's something that we can then ask the department, put that forward. Thank you for that, Andy. And members, any other business? Anybody on the phones, any other business they want to bring up?
Can I raise an issue, Chair?
Yes.
So, in the correspondence we would have received from the Student Union, it was really just to, if we could, I know it was raised in a debate yesterday, but certainly if we could write off and ask the Communities Minister up to, I suppose, ask the executive colleagues, particularly the Minister for the Economy, has there been any increase in the student hardship fund? Because some of those students mightn't meet the discretionary funds or even universal credit access and contingency funds either.
No, I think that's a good point. I think it's something that we were all getting lobbied on a couple of weeks ago from the students. Do understand their plight, and some of them are extremely worried about the pressure that is being put on them by landlords. So that's certainly something we as a committee I would agree with that we could do. Yeah. Everybody else agreement with that? Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, members. No other items under any other business.
Just one wee thing, Chair. I'm hopeful most of these things will have been ironed out, but it was just to check that the department itself is adhering to all the social distancing measures and that within its own buildings, and are affording their staff and agency staff and performing a very valuable role there every protection that they can. I do know there's an issue that's been raised locally. With me, it's around interpretation of the shielding letter, and if someone is living at home with a vulnerable relative who's been advised to shield, that some in DFC management weren't taking that as legitimate reason for someone to go into self-isolation, and I'd just like to ensure that there's fairness across the board.
I think that is a good point, because I know because of my own family member that are maybe work for the health service, and their partners have been told to shield in order to not put health service staff at risk. So I think that is a point that we need to be asking if there is general that everybody is adhering to that in all of the departments. If we're asking the general public and asking companies out there to abide by these rules, I'd like to think that we, as an executive and as an assembly, are abiding by those rules also. So that's a very good point to make. Yeah. Okay. Anything else members want to bring up before we move on to agenda item 10? No? No. Good stuff. Okay, then agenda item 10 is date, time and location for next meeting. Can I advise you that the date of the next committee meeting is scheduled for the 29th of April here in the Senate chamber, and our time slot we have been allotted is 9:30 to 12:45, or sorry, not 9:30, no, forget, right, listen to me now, it's 11:30. 11:30 to 12:45 next week, and that's when we're scheduled to meet, and we'll certainly be in contact with members if that meeting needs to go ahead or not. Okay, members happy enough? Thank you, members. Thank you. Cheers. You too. Bye.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound.